Tanya is such a powerhouse. I met her at the Maio Women Conference in Morocco last year, and she built her first seven-figure revenue business at only 27 years old. And even though she still looks 27 years old, she has many more years of experience under her belt now. And I just actually, one of her talk was one of the most impactful I've ever heard when I was at that conference, and just in general. And it's part of her business, actually, so I'll let her share that with you. But so excited to have you on. Thank you for making time, Tanya, to share your story and your insights and challenges along your journey to becoming a seven-figure female founder, because we are part of that 3% of women that actually hit seven figures in revenue, which is so rare, and that statistic is too low, which is a big part of why I'm doing this podcast, is to help women see that it's possible and tell them to not give up and to see a woman like you. So
I love that.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And so I'd love to start from the beginning. Like what, how did you get to your first seven figures in revenue? Like is this your first business? Did you have, were you working in the industry that you started the business in already, or what's that story?
That's a great question. So I started off, actually, we came to Canada from Eastern Europe in 1980. My mother was divorced my dad pretty much within the first year. It happens all the time in immigration. She was a very, very strong, powerful person. And she was actually a dermatologist that created creams that healed gangrene without amputation. So that was really like a rare type of, but she couldn't get her medical license here. So she opened up a natural skincare clinic. So I got my roots of entrepreneurship from watching my amazing mother with no English, no writing, no reading, no nothing, you know what I mean? Just completely unwilling to, unwilling to give up her profession. So it was called Skin International. Actually, she first started working for a really large organization, but, quickly became independent. And that was just incredible. And to watch her really just work with passion was, I think, my biggest lesson, because for her, even though, there's a lot of people that just like, they have a company, but their company is like hard on them. They're like, oh, I hate my business, And of course, we all hate our business sometimes, but my mother really loved her business, and she had purpose and passion in helping other people. And that was just very contagious for me. And so in the skincare industry, when I was 12, I actually started working with her, just front desk. And then 14, I became Canada's youngest government licensed esthetician, because we had a beauty school there, because they had multiple salons. My aunt was in that business. Anyway, long story short, by 15, I'd started like working 30 to 40 hours a week. And by 21, when I finished my university degree, I had like a full career in aesthetics. I'd been at, manager, I'd gone to Paris, I'd worked for the bigger firms. Like my mother really exposed me to a lot of things. And so then when I moved to Toronto at 21, I became a sales representative. And that was basically my dream, was just to go back to Europe and work as a speaker, because I was really called to speaking. I don't know what it was, to be honest with you, Cathey, but every single time I had this picture of myself, it was always in front of an audience, influencing positive change. And so that's how I eventually became. So I moved to France when I was 23, and I worked for an international skincare company as an educator and a formulator. So I formulated skincare products as well. And then when I came back to Canada at 25, my mother said to me, I have this invention. It's this incredible face bra. It's a non-surgical facelift product. It was unbelievable. You have to help me patent it. We have to make skincare. We have to go on the shopping channel. We have to do this and we have to do this. So I said to her, okay, no problem. So she kept running her salons and whatever. And so I built this company. I luckily had, experience in formulation. So I formulated 11 different skincare products, packaged it, researched what to do for the shopping channels, got onto the shopping channel, and within a year, we became the fastest selling anti-aging product in the history of the shopping channels in Canada, the US, the UK, Russia, Australia. It was crazy, like nuts.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. And I didn't realize how much we have in common, actually, until I heard that story. Like, you're the child of an immigrant mother as well, same with me, and started working with my mother as well, when I was early on. And same thing, where actually 12 years old is when I started working with my mother. And people were like, did you start in real estate when you were 12? And I was like, I actually did, because I worked with my mother. When you're an immigrant, when you're a child of immigrants, right, there's that, like, it's not a choice. It's not like, oh, honey, do you want to go work at the ice cream shop or the movie theater? No, it's like, you live in this house.
You live in this house, you're working for the business, 100%. It's the thing there, right? It's like, you here, that's the way it's going to be, like that. That's the conversation. Yeah.
With their heavy accent too, right? Like, that's exactly like my mom too. She's like, no, you work. She's like, no, you can't have too much fun. That's like, she's like, you have to work. She like had limited fun. She's like, your fun is limited to 1 day a week.
That's
just
it.
work.
Yeah. For me, and it was like, I just had like a curfew. All my teenage years,
Yeah.
I had a curfew of like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
But if I worked, I could work till midnight if I wanted to. No problem.
Exactly. I love that. And that is such an amazing story as like the child of an immigrant, right? And to just kind of build everything you have from nothing. That's so great.
It's
Oh my gosh.
amazing.
And I call it that. I don't know. I think that's what I call the immigrant guilt a little bit, right? Is how do you think that has that driven you, right? Because I've noticed a pattern across entrepreneurs, an entrepreneurs organization. A lot of us have some sort of like trauma, if you will, that really drove us to succeed at a young age or in the first part of our lives. So do you think that played into it or how or?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, and I love talking about that subject because that's kind of how we had that conversation out in Morocco too. And for me, I would say, what made me who I was in terms of one really, strong aspect of my personality is that, I just felt like my mother, when I was really young, because my brother was 7 years older, she could never compare us because it was impossible, right? So instead she would invented this other girl. The other girl would have made her bed neater. The other girl would have gotten higher marks. Tanya, if it was the other girl would have done this. Like, and by the time I was, like 13, I was ready to kill the other girl. Like, I just had visions in my head of like, oh my God, like I'm never, ever, ever going to be as good as this other girl. And I think if it was like a cousin or something like that, at least you'd have a chance at beating it. But because it was this imagination, it was this imaginary person that was constantly doing better than me in every single area of my life, I really became completely convinced that there was absolutely, without a doubt, another girl that was 100% better at me than, at this. And where it played into a part was that it drove, there was kind of two things. It made me very skeptical about like getting a job offer. Like I remember when I first got my very first job at 21, they told me afterwards that I was like so overqualified. They couldn't even believe that they found some magical unicorn that had been both in the industry and this and that and the other and spoke French and, whatever. And I just was like, all I could think of was that, the only reason I got this job was because the other girl didn't show up. Like, you know what I mean? So the interview. So it wasn't that was all that drove me. Of course, like I'm a champion achiever like you, Cathey, and everything else. So, but that not enoughness, right? I think it was like this feeling where I've just got to prove myself and I've got to be enough and I've got to do more. It's like, that's the other thing too. And I think from the immigration perspective, it's more just that like I knew that skills were the way to do it. My mother just said, education, 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 educate yourself. You will not go wrong. You will not be lost. And so, I invested in a lot of that, but then there was like the certifications in everything. And I had to have a certification in everything. And I had to be the top person in everything. And even when I was the top person, it was still thinking like, that other girl is out there and I'll just never be enough. And that was the inner conflict I definitely battled with, even though it took me years to figure that out. It's not like I grew up and I thought, oh yeah, I know that there's this other girl. It was such an unconscious thing because my mother did it so nicely. Oh, the other girl would have done it, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, whatever, but like, you don't even realize that that's it. It manifests as a blueprint of self-sabotage in our mind that has a conversation with us every single time something good happens. And you're like, no, you know what, you can't believe this because, right? Like it's that inner voice that we always battle with. The voices come from those traumatic moments.
Yeah, they do. And it's like the comparison is the thief of joy, right? That's a common saying and it's so true. And
thank goodness I healed that part of myself because swear to God, I just was like, and this is what, drove me to eventually pursue a career in neuroscience and, ultimately write this book with my co-author, Joanna Andros. But it's like, that's the thing is I just was unwilling to suffer any longer. Like I got to one point in my life where I was like speaking at the 100-year anniversary of L'Oreal. And I was the only North American on that stage. There was thousands and thousands of people in Paris. And I got off the stage and I just thought, why don't I feel happier? Like, why don't I feel like that was more amazing than, like, why don't I feel like that was as amazing as, like, I just was numb. You know what I mean? I couldn't feel the goodness in it. And that's when we changed I realized that I could succeed and succeed at a goal at any price. But I really wanted to increase my joy per minute, my JPM. Like I was going to have more joy per minute, even if I was just literally like sitting at home watching TV with my family. You know what I'm saying? I just was going to increase my joy because I was not going to have it anymore, where this was going to sabotage my joy.
Yeah, and you definitely embody that. Like, you know, you have this like energy and aura about you, which I love, and I was like instantly drawn to. And it's funny because a lot of people say that like about me, and I was like, I don't know. And I was like, I felt that about you, and I really understood it. Like when I get that comment, I was like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. When I met you, I felt like I was like, okay, now I know what people are talking about the energy and the aura and having that positivity, right? But I think a big part of that is exactly what you said, and this is my favorite topic, and I know it's yours too, and one of yours is the mindset and that what goes on between your head, and doing that inner work and investing in that personal development, that personal growth, and getting over your limiting beliefs and healing your traumas, right? And I know that's a big part of your work, right? That's what you do in a sense.
That's what I do now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like, I think when people are saying like, oh, I'm on the journey, when they think about the journey, that's the journey. Like the journey is the healing journey, because our goal is that we can have whatever vision we want. But ultimately, if we don't have alignment, right? If there's a part of us that doesn't believe that that's possible, you know, we only get what we believe. That's the reality of the situation. And investing in really healing the part of ourselves that still feels not enough, not worthy, not lovable, not safe, you know, all alone is so vital. Because, and the book that we came forward with was Undermined. And, you know, I know you had exposure to it in Morocco, but out of all the negative conversations, which I find super useful, is that there's only 7 subconscious beliefs that actually sabotage our life. Like all the conversations kind of fall into these categories. And it's that I am not enough. I am not worthy. I am not lovable. I am not safe. I'm all alone. Something's wrong and life is hard. So those are, after years and years and years of research like this, these are the 7 subconscious beliefs that I can show you kind of as an entrepreneur. So, you know, one thing that like entrepreneurs we often see is that they weren't supported by their families, you know, not emotionally, not mentally, not physically, whatever it was, right? That there was a break in parenthood. And you realize, oh my gosh, like I am on my own here. If I want something, I got to get it myself. I got to take care of myself. Right. And that's the thing. And it's interesting because like in the work that we do inside the neuroscience of success, which is the sessions where the workshops are kind of, you know, your blueprint of self-sabotage unfolds. It's like they realized that in that moment, they decided they were on their own. And if they wanted it done, it had to be them. That's when they locked in the formula for not being able to hire a team, right? Not being able to expand their business beyond themselves. And that, right? So, you know, like that, those kinds of beliefs are so prevalent in terms of how they ripple effect in our life.
Yeah. One of my limiting beliefs that I overcame was, if you want something done right, do it yourself.
That's it. That's exactly right.
And that's something that was instilled by my mother, you know, immigrant life, like you do it yourself, right? And don't trust anybody. No one's gonna, like, you know, you can't trust anyone. You can't rely on a team. And so for many years I was a solopreneur, and like I did decently well, but I was like, I could not scale my business because I just was afraid to hire. I was afraid to expand. I was afraid to trust. I was afraid to delegate. And it's because of that limiting belief. And it wasn't until I discovered Tony Robbins and neuro-linguistics programming that I was able to overcome that limiting belief. And I went from making $150,000 a year to $300,000 a year to $600,000 a year, and like so on, like in that trajectory, just from learning this, right? And so there's literally quantifiable results from this kind of work. And a lot of people don't realize that, the limiting beliefs, or they're either like are in denial, or I think they like don't want to do it, right? Or they're like, you know, maybe they recognize that they have a limiting belief, but they're like, oh, what is this woo-woo shit, right? Is what they call it. I'm like, I curse a lot. I'm from New York. It's like,
agreed.
Yeah. It's so important. And I love that you share that. And I love that you're doing this work through your business now. Because I think another thing, it's like, so I've last year, actually, when you met me, it was kind of in the middle or beginning stages of this, but I was in my probably darkest hour. I was like, so I'm generally a pretty happy, joyful person. And last year, I went through this bout of deep depression. I think I mentioned that to you a little bit. I was like, I'm struggling. It's a hard year. And I was like, I've never experienced that. And I didn't really quite understand it when I was in it or why that was happening. But then in hindsight, everything is 20/20, right? Everything is perfect vision. And what I realized is like, so my whole life up until I was like 33, which is in 2022, was survival mode. It was like, how can I get to a point where my mom doesn't have to worry about money? How can I get to a point where I don't have to worry about money? The SparkNotes version is my trauma is that I discovered my dad cheated on my mom when I was 15 years old. And so I was at a point where I was like, I can never rely on a man. I never want to rely on a man. I don't want my mom to be in this position where she's staying with my dad because of her kids and because of financial security and financial stability. And so I was like, from 15 years old up until like 33, it was like grind, hustle. That's all that mattered. And it got to a point where my mom could retire if she wanted to. If I wanted to retire to a beach to Bali, I could probably retire, but I like to live a pretty bougie lifestyle in the US, so that's a lot more expensive, so I can't retire yet, right? But it was like financial freedom, financial security achieved, and I should have been ecstatic. I should have been like, oh my God, I reached my goal. But instead, it like started this depression. And I was like, why? And I think you and I are on similar journeys, which is why I'm sharing this, in that like what I call it, and I bumped into a good friend of mine who is a very successful entrepreneur, female entrepreneur as well. And she gave me a book called The Second Mountain. I don't know if you've read that or heard of it.
The second what?
The Second Mountain. The Second Mountain. The Second Mountain. And so what The Second Mountain talks about is that your first mountain is all about that financial success, that personal goals, personal achievement. But many of us go into this valley of despair, depression. And then our second mountain ascent is all about like, how can we give? How can we serve? What is our legacy? What is our gift to the world? How can we help humanity? And it's like that raising of consciousness where it's, but level one is like that baby love. It's all about me and how can people love me unconditionally? And then you love your family, and then you love like your, romantic love, and then you love like your community, and then you love the world and humanity. And I share that because I think it seems like you're on that second mountain journey of like your new business, like you had your successful skincare brand as your first mountain. But your second mountain journey is this other business you are now launched, right? So I'd love for you to share. I don't know if that's what it is, but I'd love for you to share kind of like how you came about that.
Exactly right. So the second business that I opened was called Courageous Living. And I co-founded that with one of my, most successful, I call it marriages, my business wife, essentially Joanna Andros. She's amazing. One of my best friends. And yeah, we've been together in business 18 years. And you know what? It's amazing. Like, I love this relationship that we have in our business because we model what it is to have a really great, kind, balanced, non-competitive, joyful, loving, relationship where there's room for both of us on the stage, right? There's room for both of us in the business. And she's the therapist. So she does all the therapy, whereas I do all the speaking and everything else, right? But what ended up happening was that after, so at 27, I hit sort of that $1 million mark, which was amazing. And then the business kept going. But just like you, I was in survival mode. And then you get to the thing and you think, oh my gosh, like, I don't know, like something's wrong. And I had a nervous breakdown. Like, I actually woke up with these negative thoughts in my head for the first time. I'd never heard them before, just saying like, and you know what ended up happening actually is that a couple of years later, after the shopping channels built up to what they were, I went to the UK with a very large order, and they asked us to double our orders because we were always selling out. So I like invested money in inventory more than, normal. And then when I got there, she said, and I'm like and I don't know why I didn't think to myself, consult with your board of directors. Don't make a decision so quickly. But that's, the youth in me right at the time in my late 20s. And they said to me, your product you can't say that you develop long-term results with your product anymore. You can say that because that's paramedical. You don't have a FDA approval for that because it was like a paramedical device. And I didn't know. So ultimately they said, you can only say that it's cosmetic. And if they use it, it's very short-term results and that's all they get. And I'm like, well, that's kind of contrary to the story we've been telling. I don't think that's integral. I was all about the integrity of the brand. And I said, like, I really am not comfortable with that. And so they pulled all my shows, pulled them, like just right off the air, And I thought, oh my God, like that we started, so that was, it was just crazy. So $250,000 worth of stock came back, which, revenue another like half of, like, it was crazy, right? So I came home and I just thought, wow, that was my first major fail. And I really had a terrible relationship with failure because I just, how it is. You today failure is trending. Okay. Failure is like trending, Spanx, Sarah Blakely from Spanx made it really popular when she said her father, right, always said, what did you fail at today? Like, what is that? Right? Where's that dad? Where was that dad in my life? It was just more like, don't screw up, don't screw it up. You know what I'm saying? It's more like that. So yeah, failure was like one of those things where I thought, oh no, like I really screwed this up, like I did. And I just didn't know how to forgive myself. I didn't know how to recover. I didn't know how to be, resilient in my ability to just, and I also was having such a hard time with the shopping networks because it was money driven. Like they're like, see this word really gets people to buy, and see this is really, I was just like, this is shit. Like I don't want to, guilt women into caring for their skin. I don't want to scare them with wrinkle pictures. I want to really be a source of genuine support and all of this other stuff. So, as it turned out, when I came back, I really just, had a total change of mindset because I thought the shopping channels were robbing me of my soul. And I still think it's one of the best business models out there. It's just personally, I was not in the right headspace and I couldn't bounce back from that. And so I realized, just like you said, I was in the valley. I got into that really deep state of depression where I doubted everything in myself. And then I realized, no, what I really want to do is pursue public speaking. And so I sold a part of my company. I still have the patented portion of it. And I sold the skincare part of it and everything else, which was amazing. And then I went on to be a professional speaker. But, at 30, I decided, or 29, whatever, I decided, how you make like a businesswoman, right? You're like, oh, I'll open a business. Oh, I'm going to get married. Like no boyfriend, no nothing, but I'm getting married this year, guys. I'm just, what, it's time. Just so you know, it's time. I'm 29. I'll get married by 30. That was how it was, right? Back in the day when you think you have a plan and you have level of control, all the illusions are happening, right? So anyway, I attracted to myself, of course, my own version of what love was, my beliefs of love. And the way that I grew up, as much as I love my mother, and she was the best mother ever, she still is, you know what? It was authoritative love. You know how it is, right? It was not good enough. It was goal oriented. It was like very direct kind of that. And so I attracted a person that was very similar, one that felt comfortable criticizing me, one that felt, and I was like, okay, I'm up for growth, like it was just, he'd take plates, kind of away while I'm eating. Like, it's just this kind of control, very controlling, but I didn't know. I didn't know because I thought this is for my own good. This is so helpful for me. Like, what a good supportive individual, I didn't even know what narcissism was, to be honest with you, until it was kind of at the end. And then it was 2 years and I moved in with this individual. It was perfect. Like I learned so many lessons and I realized in losing myself completely in that relationship, like my identity, my everything, I just lost because I was trying to make it work so much because I didn't want to go through divorce like my parents did, that I lost myself in that. Like, it was amazing because when I woke up and realized what had happened and that I'd lost myself, even my friends, some of them couldn't talk to me anymore because I just become such a different version of myself, trying to please everybody and make everything work, that finally I woke up and realized, oh my God. And actually it was the movie The Secret. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, The Secret, right? In the Law of Attraction. So we share that passion, I think, as well, is that in the movie The Secret, it was my girlfriend got a copy of it, actually Joanna, who I hadn't met yet at the time. And this is where I really believe that, when you wake up and you decide I need help, that on my knees moment where you think something has to change comes. You just have to be willing to say yes to the opportunity. And so my girlfriend said, oh, you know what? I have a friend who's got this bootleg copy of The Secret. One of her friends is dating one of the guys that was on the show. So she got this DVD before anybody else. She's showing Secret Sundays at her house. So on Sunday we went and I met her for the first time and I watched this film and it was like, my beliefs create my life. What are you saying? Are you telling me that I have all I have to do is change my thinking? Sign me up. And then I went on a hiatus after that for a year of recovery. I did like Landmark and Sterling and you name it, worldwide. And then when I finished and I felt like a completely new version of myself, I came to Joanna, who'd already done that path because she ended up being my mentor through this. I said, we have to lead women. And so that was 18 years ago and thousands of women since.
I love that. I'm on a similar journey now, and I love that you say that, the investing in personal development. Like, you invest in the Landmark course. I know a lot of EO women who are all seven-figure founders like us invest in that course. And same with me, where I invested in the Tony Robbins course. I paid for UPW first. It was about $2,000 or so a person to do it live. And then at UPW, I actually paid for the mastery bundle, which I believe was like $15,000. So it's not cheap, but it is the best investment ever. And I say that, like, I say that without question. Like, I'm a real estate investor, like many people know. You know, we've scaled our portfolio to over 20 million today. And I still say the best investment I've ever made is investment in myself. And the ROI on those courses must be like 100x, which I'll never get in real estate. I'll never get it with my stock portfolio, right? The investment into myself and what goes on in my head and between, like, here is the best investment ever. So I love that you share that, you know. Yeah, I always share that. Because people are always like, they ask me, like, they know I'm a real estate investor. They know I have a great stock portfolio. They're like, what do you invest in? And I was like, how much money? I was like, you invest in yourself first. I was like, before you invest in stocks, before you invest in real estate, invest in yourself, in your mindset, and what goes on there, number one. Because that's going to be the best ROI. And it's like I say, if you don't, so if you don't invest in your mindset and your foundation, right, you can build a house, but you'll be building a house on stilts. And so what happens when you build a house on stilts? A wind comes, something comes, and everything falls apart, right? And so it's the same kind of concept where you can do it, but it's not going to be sustainable. And so I've seen people do this. I've seen people build successful, whatever it is, and everything falls apart because they haven't worked on their mindset. And so it's possible. It's just that it's not sustainable.
I love what you're saying. Yeah. Everything you're saying is like a breath of fresh air to people, I think, because honestly, I think people in general, you know, Cathey, today are exhausted, right? People are so tired of trying hard and trying their best every day. And then you realize it's like infinite. It just never, ever ends. Like, you post on social media, you have to post again. You write this email, this other one comes in. Like, it's just never ending. And if you're, you know, if you've got negative inner chatter on top of it, if you've got self-deprecating thoughts, like if you've got areas of your life where you're being a limitation to yourself because you can't see beyond what you're thinking, then you're going to, you know, that whole concept of die trying. I felt like I was going to die trying. You know, I thought to myself, Tanya, if I don't learn to love and accept myself for who I am today and realize that who I am is enough and who I am is already worthy, just being, breathing, living as a unique individual, I don't, like, that's my only accomplishment. That's the only one I want, right? I learned to love and accept myself. I did not die trying. Like, I didn't.
Yeah. I always say it's like, so the analogy I use is you have this boulder in your life that you have to move, right? You can push this boulder up a hill. You can move it up a hill. It's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be a struggle. You're going to, like, exert all your energy and, like, you're going to be exhausted. Or you can push this boulder down a hill and let gravity do the work. And so when you work on your mindset first, instead of pushing your boulder up the hill, you can push your boulder down the hill. And you experience flow state.
Make that into a visual. I love that. That's the Cathey visual. I love it.
Yeah, so that's what I use when I talk to people about the importance of working on your mindset first before, because a lot of people just, they chase the money, they chase the dollars, they try to do all this. And I'm like, it's going to be a struggle. Like, I was like, focus on your purpose. Focus on your solving problems. And that is going to lead you to where you want to be. And when people are new in the journey, they don't understand that. But I say, like, I was like, I've lived it. I've chased money and it's been a struggle. It's been a challenge. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. It manifested in physical illness. It manifested in mental issues and, like, depression and anxiety and all these things. And then when I realized, when I was focusing on purpose and solving problems, it's just flow state. It's just the universe aligns. And it's like all these opportunities come to me, all the good people, all the good things. And it's like, people need to understand and listen to that. Because I know you're a big believer in that.
No, but amen to that. I amen to that. And I love the distinction that you're making for people. Like, you know what? In the hustle, you are chasing. So you get up every day and you are like, faster. But where? For what? It's all an illusion, right? That's the thing, is you're chasing some illusion, and then you realize everything that I am and that I have is actually from within first. Like, it really does begin from within. The visualization, even just the understanding what I want. Because when you're chasing often after should goals. I should do this, I should do that. I'm this age, I should get married. Blah. Like, you know, because you're not connected to your inner compass, you're not connected to yourself, you're not connected to the divine, you're not listening. And so I love what you're saying, which is the distinction between chasing and then allowing, my God, receiving. Like, now my main focus, honestly, this year has been working on my ability to expand my capacity for receiving, whether it's, yes, like, really. And, you know, like, people want to give to us. And I have just been a very selfish, you know, kind of receiver, because I only want to I only want to give, I only feel comfortable. My comfort zone is like that. But, yeah, it's true though. But life wants to reciprocate, right? We want that. And the more we give, the more we get. So if that's the case, we have to be able to stay in flow, open. Your dog is being in agreement, right? We have to be open to allowing and receiving, because if we don't open to allowing and receiving, we make a block. And then that flow begins to stutter. And it's really important to have a balanced relationship. And we teach women that, how to balance their relationship between giving and receiving. It's so, so essential.
Yeah. That is. And you actually taught me a really important lesson about that in Morocco. I remember when we were trying to book the spa and you're like, just ask the concierge. And I was like, really? And you're like, people are here to help and to serve us. And I was like, oh, I'm just so used to doing everything myself, right? I'm not used to asking for help. And even especially with little things like that. And then we don't realize, like, I think a lot of us, especially women, I think women try to do it all a lot of times. And then unfortunately, a lot of us, and I've been there, I'll be the first to admit that, we build up this resentment towards people, especially oftentimes our partners, where we're like, oh, I'm doing all this at home and you're not helping me. And then, why the help? I do so much, right? And then I realized it's because we're not communicating that we need help. We can't expect our partners to read our minds. They want to help us, but we're not in that receiving mode. We're just like doing it and being resentful and not communicating why we're resentful or why, and then when you just ask for help, you're like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? Why didn't I do this a year ago? Why didn't I do this 5 months ago? And so a lot of people are like, how do you have such a great relationship? How is your husband so, I was like, because I ask him for help. I communicate what my bandwidth is, what I can do and what I need him to do. And we communicate openly. And they're like, I was like, it's that simple. It's open communication and it's asking for it and being open to receiving it. So I think that's a really important lesson.
Well, I think I think that brings us kind of to the manifestation formula, right? That is in effect ultimately, which is like ask, believe, receive, right? And so we actually, teach women and challenge them. It's like, okay, so even on this particular call, we invite the women that are listening, like for you as a listener, where do you think you have your greatest challenge? Is it in the area of asking? Like, are you able to ask clearly for what you want? Can you articulate it? Or does it sound like a passive aggressive request? Or does it sound like an almost sort of kind of maybe type of situation? Or is it like, I just need more support? Like, is it super vague that nobody even understands what you're asking for? Like, or are you really good at being, don't be a multitasker, be a multi-asker. That is the way to do it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Be a multi-asker.
That's right. I'm done multitasking. I'm a multi-asker, and then so it shall be done, right? And so ultimately in ask is the first one. And then the second one is believe. It's like, okay, so you've asked for what you wanted. Like, your vision, you are clear, your mission, your measurables, you have your KPIs, all these things. But what about believe? Are you in a place where you feel truly aligned, like deep down inside, that you can count on others, that the world is a safe place for you to grow, that, it's like you are still growing, like what affirmations, like what beliefs check in if there's still something there that's creating static in your ability to truly be in alignment with your vision. And the third one is receive. It's like, we ask women, it's like, okay, how are you at receiving? Like, how comfortable are you receiving a compliment? Are you actually able to stand there and just say, really genuinely, thank you so much. I really feel that. Like, I have had to teach myself, it took me 6 months just of this year to slow down enough when someone says something positive and give them the space to express themselves and just say, Tanya, drink it in, now or never, girl. Like, this is it. Am I going to die trying, or am I going to sit here and realize I have come to it? Like, it's now, it's happening now.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I'm the same way. I think it's like this, it's so funny. Everything you share, I'm like, oh my God, there's so much alignment and synchronicities with I think our thought process, our upbringing, all these things, and our struggles, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the important part of that is also of course, it's us. I think being in the female founder world and seven-figure founders, we go through a lot of the same struggles. But the other part of it, I think, is also just the oneness of humanity, that a lot of us fail to remember, the oneness of humanity of what you shared earlier, where it's you have this feeling of not enough, and it fuels you to in this bad relationship. And I've experienced the same thing, and I think a lot of women have. And I think it's important, the audience, a lot of entrepreneurial women, and I know so many that are so successful in their work life and in their business, but in their romantic and personal relationships are not. And a big part of that is the traumas of like feeling like you're not enough. And I was the same way, where I was, you know, in earlier on in my life, I was in these relationships that were just not healthy, because I felt like, oh, who would want a woman who's like so loud and strong-minded and outspoken? Because I love my mom, same thing. She's like amazing, and she's a powerhouse. And I don't know, it's really ironic because she's the one who actually really like fueled our real estate investment portfolio, and I worked with her on that. But like, she was always also like, oh, you know, you're so loud for a girl. Like, you know, you're so like, again, that kind of thing. And I thought it was a bad thing to be like so loud and so like such a big personality. And so I thought it was like, oh my God, what guy is going to want to deal with my like extra, my crazy, my like, you know? And so I was in a string of bad relationships, and because I hadn't healed that trauma. And I think it's important to share that and be honest and candid about that like you can have it all together in your business life. You can have it all together in your professional life, and you can be like a shit show in your personal life until you heal what's within your heart, within your head. And I think those are important things. I'm glad you shared your journey, and I wanted to share mine too. Is like, hey, like if you're going through that, if you're like on your knees, head in your hands moment is not business related, but personal related, understand that there's a light at the end of that, and that you can get yourself out of that.
Totally. Absolutely. And I can speak from my own testimony. Thank goodness that, you know, when I did work on, like, because Courageous Living was not a company just for other women. Courageous Living is a company that I've created my whole life out of that company as well. Like, I put myself in all the exercises. Those women, we are not just leading them, we are growing with them. And, you know, I can safely say that when I first met my husband, you know, I met him because I needed branding and a website, and, you know, he had a digital marketing agency. We felt connection. But it was like everything in my mind was like, there's no way that I'm going to be married to a person this nice, or, you know, I couldn't even date him. It was just impossible. I was looking at him, like every single part of it was wrong because I was attracting unhealthy relationships. And that's what looked familiar and good, right? But then luckily over the 3 years that we worked together, I did a lot of growth work. And finally, by the time that, you know, he broke up with the woman that he was with for, you know, many, many years, it wasn't working. And I was like, I came to the realization that no, it's actually okay to have a safe person who loves you in your life. And so we immediately got together, and it was as if it was like a house on fire. And we've been married and together 18 years. And, you know, it's our 13th year married actually. And so, you know, now we're doing communication classes, we're doing tantric classes, we're, you know, inspiring our friends. Like, we have the world's like the best relationship. We have a beautiful son. Like, I could not be happier. And you know what? Had I not done the work, to your point, had I not stopped everything and just said, I'm making myself a number one priority in my life, because until I do, no one will ever give me priority. I'm going to invest the time, the love, the health, the forgiveness, the money into myself. And I just know, like you said, it's the best investment, because the return on investment is the one that you're in 7 days a week, 365, right?
Exactly. I know. I love that. And I love that for you. And I think, you know, you're such an embodiment and living example of that, and the message I want to share with women is that you can have it all.
You can have it all.
You can have the amazing relationship. You can have the awesome business. You can have it all. And don't let society tell you otherwise, because a lot of people are like, oh, you can either be a good mom or a good wife and have a good relationship, or you can do this and be a good businesswoman. No, you can have it all. You can have the happy, healthy marriage. You can have, and actually you inspired me, because, you know, for many years I was like a hard no on ever having kids. And I love that you shared that you had a kid later in life, because I was like, well, I want to build my business first. And I don't want to have that resentment or regret. And I love that you shared, you know, you did that. And I was like,
40,
oh, that's awesome.
My son at 40, like I did. I waited till I couldn't sort of wait any longer. And it was great. It was the perfect decision. And, you know, like, to your point, again, it's kind of like, if you are a chaser, like, you can have it all. You can have it all, not if you're a chaser. If you're chasing your life down and you're trying to make things work and you're trying to check all the boxes, you're going to die trying, right? That's where that comes from. However, if you can have it all by being enough, and saying, okay, like, you know what, you can either be the best mother or the best this. It's like, what are your expectations of yourself? How are you not communicating? Where are you not getting help? Like, I outsource so much of myself. I have a personal assistant. Like, if women are making 7 figures, listen, you need a personal assistant doing things in your house, returning your Amazon packages, doing nonsense, taking your dry cleaning, doing whatever, once a week. Once a week, you have a personal assistant. There's people that love doing that kind of thing, you know, running your groceries, doing whatever you need. And then you have your team. But like, get your act together so that all of the time you show up unhurried. And that comes from allowing and receiving. So yes, you can have it all when you realize it's faster alone, but further together. You know, you get further when you are running with a great team of people who want to support you and that you feel like you are worthy of being supported because you are doing wonderful things for the world by being the special human being you are. Thank you so much, Cathey, for connecting with me and sharing this beautiful message to your listeners and to my listeners. And you know what? I just love what you're doing, and I love your beautiful face. And I love that we met in Morocco when I saw you in your shadows, because all of a sudden when you got back home and everything had transformed, I couldn't believe the woman I saw. I'm like, this woman is a celebrity. Look at how she goes to Vegas with the fringes and everything. I love how you live full out. Bravo for living full out, for putting on the most exquisite outfits, for just for the joy that you bring to every event, because you're celebrating life. Thank you for celebrating life. We are celebrating with you.
Thank you.
Good reminder.
You too. Thank you for being such an inspiration. And I love I'm going to use that term, a multi-asker, because I've just started to embrace that this year, and it's made a world of difference. Because I actually listened so on our EO chapter retreat, we went to San Diego, and we did an event with them, and there's an amazing speaker, and I've been quoting him. His name's Jeremy Poinstott, and he talks about basically, together we are limitless, alone we are limited. And that our greatest strength and superpower is the ability to ask and collaborate and rely on our community and our teams and the people in our lives. And so many people don't realize, they think it's a weakness to ask for help, but it's a strength and a superpower to ask for help. And being willing to ask, like you said, the multi-asker. And so I really love that about you, and how you taught me a lot of things when I was in Morocco, where you're like, just ask for help. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know I could just do that. I was like, let me just do it myself, right? And we booked a spot, and so that was great.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And we focus, when we focus on the asking, I try not to focus so much on my ask as much as I try to focus on my ability to receive in that moment. It's like I become very receptive and soft because I don't want it to come the way I think it should. Like, I'll do the asking and say, is this possible? And then I'll just be very still and quiet and allow the other individual to do everything. I've seen people where they ask and then they go, maybe you should do it this way, and maybe you should do it this way, and maybe it can be done this way. And you're like, don't do that. That's you controlling the universe. Just ask and focus on now allowing and allowing and allowing. It's like, in curling, Canada has, I'm from Toronto, in Toronto, so we have curling in Canada where you shoot the stone and then the rest of the time you spend sweeping. That's what this whole process is. We spend time sweeping so that we get further.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the trust in the universe, and also the trust in, I don't know, depends on what you believe in, right? The divine, God, the universe.
Yes,
I talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned that earlier too, about the trusting your inner voice and your intuition. And that comes with that openness, that willingness to receive, and trusting that life is always happening for us and not to us.
Amen.
And that there's always a greater reason and purpose. And in our deepest, darkest moments, you can't really see it. But when you're out of it, like I always say, the breakthrough comes after that breakdown.
100%.
And I think you and I are living examples of that, where it's like we both had to go through that breakdown to get our breakthrough. But now we're on this journey where we get to inspire, uplift, empower, and educate other women on how to reach their breakthrough. So
yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
beautiful.
you.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you.